On today's show, I'm going to show you how to do some much needed maintenance on your 3D printer. Stay tuned. Hey, welcome back to the First Layer. My name's Richard Cleveland. This is a show that explores the world of 3D printing. Now, on today's show, we are going to do some much needed maintenance on our CR10 here. It's been a while since I've done anything to it. So the fans are starting to get a little noisy. Things are starting to get dirty. Just some general maintenance. And this is something I recommend to anybody who has any type of 3D printer. Right around that 1,500 hour mark is a good gauge to start doing some maintenance on your 3D printer, like re-greasing your rods, making sure that all your belts are tight. If you've got a CR10 or a Ender 3, you're going to make sure that all your wheels are tight and everything is level, and you're going to check for fraying on your cords and things like that. So today what we're going to do is we're going to do all of that on my personal CR10. I've had this machine for quite some time. There's not a lot that's been done to it in terms of upgrades. I put a little light on the top so I can see when I'm printing things in a darker room. I did put the Micro Swiss all metal hot end on there. I have not changed out the fans, but we're going to show you how to do that today. I have upgraded the Bowden tube, and I did a little bit of maintenance for the filament out detection switch that comes with your CR10S. I just made a nice little box here for it to go in, and it doesn't come off anymore. So it's a good thing. Now, looking at the general condition of this machine, I can see I've got some things that really need to be done. But first, let's talk about some of the tools that we're going to use today. First and foremost, we are going to use some white lithium grease. And I'm just going to cut to another camera here so you guys can see this. So let's have a look at some of this stuff. Here's the grease that we're going to use. It's LB8042 from Loctite. It's white lithium grease. We're going to be using that today. We're going to be using some machinist blocks. We're going to use this nice little fancy brush to clean off our nozzle. We've got a set of sockets down here, some tweezers. We have our calipers, which we may need. Got some clippers. Of course, you always need those. We have our Allen key set, a few things to help us clean out the nozzle, and just a couple of miscellaneous wrenches. So these are the things that we're going to be using today to upgrade or clean up our 3D printer. Now, first and foremost, this is the stuff you want to use. It's called Air Duster. That seems to be the brand of this one, but it's just a can of compressed air. Now, you can use your compressor if you like. Just make sure that you turn down the pressure kind of low, because what you don't want to do is start spinning these fans really, really fast and then they burn out. Now, these fans that come with this machine and most machines today are what's called sleeve bearing fans. They're a lower quality fan. They wear out quite quickly. I like to use ball bearing fans, and I have a selection of them here on my desk, which we're going to be using today to upgrade our fans on this machine, just make it a little bit quieter. We have put some stepper motor dampeners on this machine, not very many. But first and foremost, we really need to give it a good dusting. So we're just going to get off all of the excess stuff that we can find. There we go. I know it probably sounds horrible on the camera. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to shake up this can and then go ahead and start dusting things. Because if you do that, what'll happen is the propellant that's in here will come out with the air, and it's not a very good thing for your printer. Get in that fan a little bit. We can see if we go to this front view that we've got a little bit of dust here in our front fan, so we're just going to take our compressed air and just get in there. It doesn't look like we're able to get a lot of that out. So what we're probably going to do is we're going to take this off We're going to have a look inside. We'll use our tweezers to get out some of those finer 3D printing hairs. That are kind of stuck on there. So let's go ahead and start doing that. So we're just going to go ahead and take off this front plate. That's where we're going to start. We are going to get into some of the other aspects of the machine when we start replacing stuff. But it is a good idea to, you know, try and get some of that junk. Let's see if I can go back to a camera that'll show us this really well. Let's try and get some of this junk off of our printer, because that can cause unnecessary wear over time. And we've got some that are wrapped around our motors here a little bit. This is typical of something when you start getting a lot of stringing. When you start getting a lot of stringing on your 3D prints, that can get caught up in the wheels, it can get caught up in the belt, it can get caught up in the fans, and it also can wrap itself around the motor shafts, which can cause a lot of problems. And if you can get in there and just clean that out, that's going to help your motors last a little bit longer. All right, so we've got those motors cleaned off. Now, before we take that off, we're going to take a little bit of kitchen roll, and we're just going to wipe down our lead screws. And you can see, as you know, as we get to cleaning things off, things are quite dirty. Now, this is a result of dust attracting to the lithium grease that we talked about earlier. And it will become black, and you know, as you print more and more, if you don't do this simple maintenance once in a while, you can end up really messing up your machine. So we're just gonna go along and just clean off most of that, or get it all off as best we can on both sides without turning the lead screw. Get in underneath there because we've got a lot. Now you can certainly wear gloves to do this if you don't want to get your hands all greasy and dirty. This is a messy job, so it looks like those are pretty good. I'm just going to raise up my gantry here a bit. Now I can feel binding on one side. So what does that tell me? It tells me that I've got a lead screw that is a little tight as it's going up. And I think it's that one there. So we're just going to raise this up just a little bit. And we'll get our paper towel in there again, and we'll just kind of clean off some of that residue. And this will also help to get some of that dirt off of the machine as well. This is one of the dirtiest parts of your machine is these lead screws. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll get set up to do the leveling of the gantry to the frame. We're going to use the machinist blocks for that. We'll be right back. All right, so we've got our machinist blocks in place. Now we're just going to lower this gantry, the X-axis, all the way down till it touches those. Now, we could certainly do this faster if we plugged in the machine, but because we're doing maintenance, I like to do this all by hand. And all we're going to do is get this just to rest on these machinist blocks. You'll definitely feel when it's there. Now that's nice and tight there. That one's a little loose, so we're gonna bring that down a little bit more so it tightens up. There we go. That's nice and tight there. Now that we've got it tight on both sides and I can't move those machinist blocks, what I'm going to do is take my little wrench, this little guy. Let me see if I can move to a camera that'll give us a little bit better angle. All right, so here we've got, you can see the machinist blocks are in place here. I'm going to turn this camera a little bit. Now I'm going to go in and I'm going to adjust the eccentric spacers, which are back here. Because I know that I've got a couple of wheels that are a little loose. This top one's quite loose. That one's okay, but the bottom one is not. So I'm going to take my wrench that came with my 3D printer, and I am just going to adjust this so that that wheel doesn't turn freely anymore. And we'll check the bottom, make sure that one doesn't turn freely. So we're good there. And we'll do the same thing on this side. Now I've got a wheel on the bottom that's really loose. So let's go ahead and bring that in. So that now is good. My machinist blocks are still nice and tight. Just double check this side. That one's still a little loose. Just give it a little bit of a tighten. Check them all. You can turn them with your finger, then they're too loose. So those are all pretty good, except for maybe that one right there. It's just a little tiny bit out. When you adjust one side, you are going to be able to adjust the other. The other side is going to go out of whack a little bit. Okay, I'm satisfied with that. Now that I've got all those done, I'm going to check the wheels on here as well. And they seem to be a little bit out, so I'm just going to, again, put my spanner on there and just give it a little tighten until that whole thing tightens up. And that is perfect. Now I'm going to just run this back and forth across just to make sure that there's no dropouts in it. And that is pretty darn good if you ask me. We got some junk that's built up behind there, so we're going to take the opportunity to take that off as well. All right, so the next step that we want to do is we're going to go ahead and heat up our hot end. And we're going to pull the silicone sock off our hot end before we do that. And if you don't have a silicone sock on your hot end, that's okay. Now, for clarity's sake, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take off the shroud here that contains the fan so we can get a better look at the hot end. All right, so I've gone ahead and removed the hot end. And our gantry is nice and tight here. I've taken off my silicone sock, which is right there. And I've just put that down on the base. I've inspected the silicone sock just to see if there's anything in there that I can remove. And there really isn't a whole lot. Mostly what's happening in there is a little bit of discoloration, and I'll show you that on another camera here in just a few minutes before we put everything back together. But we're going to turn on the machine and we're going to hear how those fans sound. Now that's pretty loud, so we're going to have to go into the control box a little bit later and clean some things out there. But first and foremost, we want to bring our hot end to temperature we're going to inspect the wires as well while we're having a look at things. And we're going to see if we've got any shorts or anything's happening. And then this is the time to address that, if that's the problem. So our machine's a little bit noisy. We're heating it up right now. When it's come to temperature, we will come back and we'll give this a little bit of a cleaning with our brass brush. All right, so we're at temperature now. We're just going to take our brass brush. We're just going to get some of the junk off of it that we've had on from previous cleanings of different printers. And that's what I like about these brass brushes, is you can just clean a lot of this stuff off. Like, it'll just flake right off. So bang it down on your desk. Now, we know that there's not a lot of junk underneath here. If we cut back to that close-up, you can see there's not a lot of material under there, but we are going to just give it a little extra cleaning there. Get off any of the stuff that might be around. We're going to try not to disturb any of the wires on this side of the hot end. This is the time I also like to take the opportunity to pull out my Bowden tube. This can be a little difficult. There we go. And you can see that we've got a little bit of filament still in there. So we're going to remove that filament now. Pull it all the way through and just get rid of that filament. This is where we can inspect the end of our Bowden tube. You can see this one's a little bit cut up. It's got a little groove worn into it, but that shouldn't be too much of a problem for us. We can shorten it if we need to, but I don't think we're going to have to. But now what we're going to do is we're going to take this long, straight wire, and we're just going to push it down through, and we're just going to push any additional material that we've got in there out. We're going to really clean this hot end. And get it ready for another cleaning a little bit later on. So we'll just take that away. Try not to touch the hot end because it is warm, and that wire will get really, really warm if you leave it down in there. So I think we're pretty good there. Just having a look at my fan, I can see that that fan is, yeah, it's got some junk in it, so we're going to clean that out as well. So we're just going to shut off the machine now. We're going to let everything cool down. And we're going to get in there and we're going to clean out. Now that we've got the fan housing removed, we can get in there with a pair of tweezers. And we can just clean out some of that mess that is stuck in there. And what that is, that's dust from around the house or in the room that you're in. If you're finding that you just can't get it all, come in from the back side. Just come in from the back side and we'll get in and get some more of that. Now this is a stock Creality fan. We're going to take the opportunity today to change that out, because this has got a lot of nasty junk in it. So we're going to take the opportunity to take that one out, and we're going to replace that with the a ball bearing fan, which will be a little better for what we want to do anyway. We're just going to inspect our wires and make sure everything's good there. Everything looks okay. Let's unplug our printer and go ahead and start on those fans. All right, so we're ready to replace our fans, and replacing these fans couldn't be any easier. What you want to do is get a pair of cutters, and what I would do is just typically take these off pretty close to the fan itself, and we'll just cut them. And the same thing with these ones, we're just going to cut them. And now we've got the housing in our hand. You see that? We just cut those wires. Now, you're probably wondering, well, Rich, where is the negative and the positive wire on that fan? It's got a blue and a yellow wire. Well, we're going to fix that. We are going to take the fan out, and I'm going to show you something. as we do that. Try and get you guys so that you can see this on camera. We've got 4 screws to take out. Get those 4 taken out. And then we should be able just to pop that fan out. And I'll show you how you can tell which is your negative and which is your positive after you've cut those wires. We should be able to pop this right out now. Doesn't come right away. Just give it a little gentle persuasion. Probably stuck in there a little bit. Should pop right out of there. Now there are little standoffs in there that kind of help to hold this in place. There we go. Little persuasion. So when we look at this fan, we can peel back the sticker a little bit, and that will show us where our positive and our negative is, because they are clearly marked on the fan. Let's see if I can get you guys a little closer on that. Maybe I'll just have to switch cameras here. There we go. So you can see underneath that sticker we have a positive and a negative. And in this case, our positive is the yellow wire. So if that stands to reason, then we know that red is our positive wire and black is our negative wire on our new fan. So we're just going to cut off a little bit of excess here. There we go. We don't need this part. So we're just going to put that aside. We're going to take our fan, flatten out those wires a little bit, strip them. You don't have to strip them very much. Just a little bit will do you. You can see there, we've only have very little bit of it stripped. Now we'll just separate those two with our fingers. Should come apart a little bit. There you go. There we go. Cut that. We've opened that up. Now we can go ahead and put on our connectors. And the connectors we're using are some little locking connectors that I have here, which work really well for fans, because if you have in the future, if you have a fan that you want to change out, well, these connectors are great for that. So we're going to use 2 of those, and let's find some mates for those. I just happen to have some right here. So there's a female and a male end. Now the male end is always longer and the female end is shorter. Okay, and you also have male and female pins. So let's go ahead and put the male pins onto the fan side. So we've got 2 male pins right there. We're going to go ahead, put them into our crimpers. Now you're not going to have all of these tools. Not a lot of people have all these tools. But they are tools maybe to think about getting in the future. You certainly don't have to be as fancy as me. I'm just going to put that red wire in there, crimp it down, very gently take it out of there. There we go. We got a good connection on that wire. So let's do the next one. Now, if you're following along, you know that our negative lead is the blue lead, and our positive lead is the yellow lead. We've got that one in there. Now, because these are so small, sometimes you just have to wiggle them out of there and make sure that you've got a good solid connection on them. And there we go. So we're going to turn those so they're orientated the right way. And we're going to find our yellow and our blue wire over here. Just take those two and just kind of push them off to the side. Let our Bowden tube go back there. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to strip these ends. Got the blue stripped. Let's strip the yellow. There we go. And we're going to put the negative terminals on the blue and the yellow up here. Again, same procedure. You're just going to go ahead and grab the female pins, a couple of them. And we're going to pop them in our crimper and just crimp them on. I'll go ahead and get that done, and we'll line everything up, and we'll be right back. So if we've done everything correctly, we should now just be able to put our sock back on, put our Bowden tube back into our 3D printer's hot end, and then put the shroud back over top of our 3D printer. We'll just pull the sleeving down just a little bit. There we go. Now, yes, these wires could be tidied up a little bit more, and we may end up doing that at some point in time, but for now, they're not going to get in our way, and I think we'll be okay. Let's just have a look at those wires. There we go. So you can see there's a little bit of a bundle there. We can clean that up quite easily. But for now, what we're going to do is we're just going to put this back on. We've done the maintenance that we have to do on the hot end. We've cleaned it out. There's no residual plastic in there. Now it's just a matter of reassembling the shroud. We'll get the first one started, and then we'll grab the second one and put the second one in. We're going to keep an eye on our wires so that we don't pinch anything. Everything still moves fairly freely. All of our wires are there. We're not getting anything caught on our fan. Our fans are all blowing the right way. And now we'll turn it on and give it a test. Now this fan is much quieter than it was before. Much quieter. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm just going to bring all of my connections to the same point, and then I will probably put a zip tie right around there so that everything stays and nothing gets moved around. All right, so now that we've got the hot end all done, we can take those tools and we can put them off to the side. We don't need them at the moment because we are going to now turn our attention to greasing up our linear rods, or in this case, our lead screws. We're going to use a little bit of this lithium grease, and we're just going to put a little bit on the back side. You don't have to put much. Might help if you open it first. There we go. Whoop. Now, if that should happen to you, just go ahead and just dab it up your lead screw. Like I'm doing here. I'm just putting a little dab on it. And then I'm going to run the lead screws up and down. And any excess that's going to come off of there, I'm going to see. So, close up this. Put that off to the side because we don't need it anymore. Now we're going to turn our attention to the control box, and we're just going to move that axis up and down. So I'm just going to turn the control box towards me for the moment. I'm going to go to prepare, and I'm going to say to move axes. In this case, because we haven't upgraded the firmware, which is something that we're going to do at this time as well, we can only move the axes up by 1. So we're going to run that up. We're going to listen for any abnormal sounds. We can take our machinist blocks out now. And if you get a little bit of accumulation on there, don't worry about it. Just take your paper towel and just get in there and just take off some of that accumulation. That way it won't attract too much dust. And you can do that on this side as well. This side actually doesn't look too bad. So we're going to run it all the way up. We're listening for any abnormal sounds in our Z-axis rods as it's going up. And it doesn't sound like we've got any. And you go right to the top here. And there we are. So bring it down just a little bit. Now we're going to home the machine. So go back to prepare, and we'll just do an auto home. We're just going to make sure that our bed clears everything. We know that our wheels are nice and tight now. We know that our X-axis gantry is square to the rest of our frame. It's level to the rest of our frame. These are just the little things that help to make everything work a little bit better on your 3D printer. We are probably going to have to level our bed. But as this is going back down, we are going to then turn our attention to our control box, because we got a pretty noisy fan in there as well. Okay, so what we've done now is we've gone ahead, we've cleaned this all up. Our hot end is all nice and cleaned out. It's purged. We put in a couple of new fans that are a lot quieter. Now let's turn our attention over to the box itself, the control box. In this case, we're going to have to blow it out. We've got our light attached. We're going to make a few modifications there. And again, this is all part of the regular maintenance. Not so much the light, but getting in and blowing out the dust and maybe replacing a fan or two. And we're going to replace a fan inside of the control box as well. So let's get everything unhooked, get the control box open, and we'll give you guys a look inside. All right, so we've gone ahead and unhooked our control box. We're just going to take off the spool holder real quick. I tightened those screws down, didn't I? I'll just take that right off of there. Put this off to the side because we're not going to need it right away. And let's have a look. If we inspect the side of our control box, we can see, we'll just cut to that camera right now. We can see we've got some dust in there for sure. We could probably see there's a little bit of dust around the venting down here. And there's certainly some dust in and around the vents there. So before we go too far, we're just going to give this a couple of shots of air. We want to make sure that the box is turned over, upside down, And we'll go ahead and pull out the screws that are on this side. So we're going to need, of course, our Allen keys again. And we'll just go ahead and pull that off, and we'll get a look inside. Now we're going to go ahead and remove the 4 screws that hold the power supply in place. And it'll give us a little better chance to get in there with the air and clean out that power supply a little bit. So again, we're just going to grab ourselves an Allen key from our key set, and we're just going to open that up. Take out those 4 screws. Just put them off to the side so we don't lose them. We'll check to make sure that all of our connections are done up properly and that sort of thing. There we have, we've released it. So it dropped down there. Now the way to get this out of here so that we can go ahead and start moving things around is you want to put your hand in at the front and just tilt it till it comes out. Just like that. So we can see we've got a little bit of dust in there, so we're just going to blow all that out. And there we are. So now we've got that fan inside there. Let's see how well we can see that. This is the fan that is causing us all of our noise issues right here. And we've got a replacement for that right there. Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're just going to move those little cables out of the way. We're going to release the fan from its mounting. And that seems to be all tucked in there. So we're just going to grab our snips and just carefully snip that zip tie. Get that zip tie out of there. And then pull that fan wire. Now there's a couple of screws that are holding this down to the base, and we're just going to take those out. And this will all come out as one assembly. We'll just go ahead and do that. This should all remove very, very simply. And the fan that we're replacing here is a 50 millimeter fan. So it's a pretty simple fan. It's a common size. We are going to replace it with a ball bearing fan because the ball bearing fan, of course, is going to give us a little quieter operation. It's going to last a little bit longer than that sleeve bearing fan like we discussed earlier. This is something I recommend that you do on most low cost to medium cost printers. Is if you go ahead and replace those fans, you can see there's that sleeve bearing fan right there. Let's see if we can get a close up on that. Up to that camera. There you go. There's that sleeve bearing fan right there. And it's all on this little bracket. We don't want to lose any of our screws, so let's make sure that we've got those. We heard them go away, so we're going to make sure that we've got them all that we need. There we go. We'll make sure that they're in the right spot. We can see that there's a lot of junk on that fan. And being a sleeve bearing fan, it's going to get noisy pretty quickly. So let's go ahead and just take this one off. Now, you will find that on this fan, it's not the standard type of screws that we've been using. This one now is using a different set of screws altogether. These are Phillips head screws. So we're going to go and get a Phillips head screwdriver and take these 4 screws out. And this could be a good time if you wanted to go ahead and change those to something you can use with an Allen key, and we may end up doing that. Okay, so we've gone ahead and changed that fan. We've gone ahead also and just cleaned off any excess dust that might be on our bottom grate here. We've cleaned out any dust inside the control box, so we should be, for all intent and purposes, good to go. So let's go ahead and screw this back on. And what I like to do with this, because it's a little difficult to get back into place, and a lot of people put this, believe it or not, put this part on wrong, we're just going to start with that center screw. There are only 5 screws on the bottom. We're going to leave it a little bit loose. Then we're going to push the plate down so that it sits on top of the other holes. We'll go ahead and put in another screw here. And it may pop back out on you, but that's okay. It will seat back down in there. Just going to get all of these kind of started, and then we can come back and make sure that it is in the right spot. And then we can go ahead and tighten them all down. But as far as the printer maintenance goes, you're pretty much done at this point, unless you want to make some changes to your printer. And of course, sometimes we do. Today we changed fans after about 1,500 hours. It's a good idea to make those changes. And we're just going to force this out a little bit so that we can get this to seat down nice and tight in there. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a challenge. There we go. We've got that part in there. Now we're just going to tighten these back down. Tighten the back ones. They'll be seated properly, and then we'll go up to tighten the front ones. And these are the things that, you know, I kind of recommend that you do on about every 1,500 hours of printing or so. I really like these particular setups because they're easy to do. The CR10, the Ender 3, anything from Creality is pretty easy to do maintenance on. And then we'll just tighten up that final screw there so we don't forget. And then we'll plug it all back in. We'll see how it sounds. We'll put our light bar back on the top, and I'll talk about putting this, doing a light bar like this at a later date. But now we've replaced 3 fans in our 3D printer today. To make it a little bit quieter and to make it last a little bit longer, we replaced our part cooling fan, our heatsink fan, and our control box fan. Now we're all ready to hook it back up to the 3D printer and level our bed and start printing. Okay, so we've got everything back and connected up, and we're just going to flip on the switch and see how she sounds now. A lot quieter. With the fans moving now, we've got ball bearing fans in there. Everything seems to be moving a lot quieter. We got some good airflow. We got some good airflow out the back of the 3D printer box, or the control box, and everything now is set to go. So let's recap what we did. First, we went ahead and cleaned off and re-greased our lead screws. We leveled our gantry so that we made sure that it was level on both sides so we could go ahead and re-level the bed. We also took apart our fan shroud, and we took the opportunity to replace the sleeve bearing fans with ball bearing fans. We did that in the control box as well. We got rid of all the grime and dust and hairballs and plastic hairballs that we could from the machine. We reinstalled everything, and now we are good to go ahead and level our bed and start a brand new print. So with that said, thank you for joining me today. I hope this was informative. I hope that you learned something here today. You've got to have just a few tools on hand to get things done, but it's not a big problem. So if you liked today's show, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Also share this video, like it, give us a big thumbs up or thumbs down, comment down below, and let us know exactly what you thought. Now I've got to go ahead and clean off my mirror here so I can re-level my bed, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. I want to thank a few people. First and foremost, Spool 3D for all of the help that they give us with the room that we use here each and every week to bring you this show. Thank you very much to them. They've got everything that you need, from printers to supplies to upgrade parts, everything that you need, even including filaments and a few extra accessories. So check them out today at spool3d.ca. Thanks to my staff who's away today. They're off on their own adventures, and we will see them, of course, on another episode coming up. And also, watch out for other episodes coming up around the CR10 and around other Creality products. We're going to keep going with our little series on Creality products here. We're going to be installing the BL Touch fairly soon onto this unit. And this is the Creality version of the BL Touch, so you want to come back for that. So until next time, my friends, thanks very much for joining me. I look forward to seeing you each and every week. And remember that the first layer is always your foundation to a great print. Have a great day.